Hey everyone, welcome back to another Sleepover with History. I'm Thomas, and I'll be your guide for tonight's journey into absolute prehistoric terror. Before we dive into tonight's nightmare fuel, take a moment to like the video if you enjoy these deep dives into historical suffering, and subscribe if you want more reasons to appreciate your modern life. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see our global insomniac community gathering for another round of "Thank God I wasn't born then." Now, dim those lights, grab something warm to drink, and settle in. Because tonight we're travelling back roughly 300,000 years to explore why you, yes you, scrolling through your phone while wearing pyjamas and complaining about your Wi-Fi speed, wouldn't survive a single day in the Stone Age. You think your life is hard? You think choosing between Netflix shows is stressful? You think your commute is brutal? Well, buckle up, because we're about to discover what real hardship looks like. We're talking about an era where having a bad day meant being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, where running late meant your entire tribe starving, and where catching a cold was basically a death sentence. Tonight we're exploring the stone-cold reality of life before civilization, before medicine, before literally everything that keeps you alive right now. From the moment you wake up until the moment you hopefully don't die, we'll walk through a typical day in the Stone Age and discover exactly why your soft modern self would be extinct faster than you can say, "Where's the nearest Starbucks?" So grab your metaphorical loincloth, forget everything you know about comfort, and let's journey back to when humanity's biggest achievement was not getting mauled by a mammoth. This is going to be a long night, and by the end of it, you'll never complain about your morning alarm again. Welcome to the Stone Age. Population, barely hanging on. Survival rate, abysmal. Your chances, non-existent.
Picture this. You wake up in the Stone Age, not in a cozy cave with Instagram-worthy rock formations and a convenient stream nearby. No, you wake up exactly where most Stone Age humans did, on the hard ground, under a lean-to made of sticks, that's about as waterproof as a screen door, surrounded by the kind of darkness that makes you question whether you still have eyeballs. But here's the thing. You don't just wake up, you jolt awake because something large and unfriendly is sniffing around your campsite, and your brain, still wired for modern life, immediately reaches for your phone to use as a flashlight. Except there is no phone, there's no light switch, there's no 911 to call, there's just you, the darkness, and whatever is making that low growling sound that definitely isn't your stomach asking for breakfast. Welcome to day one of your Stone Age experience. You have approximately 16 hours of daylight to figure out how to not die, and spoiler alert, you're going to fail spectacularly. Let's start with the basics. You're cold. Not "I should grab a sweater" cold. We're talking "my bones are trying to escape my body" cold. The average global temperature during the Stone Age was significantly lower than today. We're talking about periods when Europe looked like Antarctica, and stepping outside meant instant frostbite. Your modern body, used to climate-controlled environments, heated cars, and insulated buildings, is about as prepared for this as a goldfish is for rock climbing. Your first instinct might be to build a fire. Great idea, except you have no idea how to do that. You've seen it in movies, you've watched survival shows, you might have even been a Boy Scout, but rubbing two sticks together until they burst into flames is not actually a thing that happens outside of Hollywood. It's a complex skill that takes years to master, requires specific types of wood, perfect conditions, and the kind of patience that modern humans simply don't possess. Stone Age humans spent their entire childhoods learning firemaking. You learned how to operate a remote control. They practiced for hours every day, creating sparks from flint and steel. You practiced for hours every day, creating complaints about your internet speed. See the problem? But let's say miraculously, you managed to create a spark. Congratulations! You've just used up about 90% of your daily caloric intake, and you still don't have a fire. Because here's what nobody tells you about fire making. The spark is just the beginning. You need Tinder, not the dating app. Actual Tinder. Dry grass, bark, moss. Stuff that catches fire easily. But it's been raining for 3 days. Everything is soaked, and you're starting to realize that waterproof wasn't really a concept yet. Even if you find dry material, you need kindling. Small sticks, twigs, gradually building up to larger pieces. This isn't throw a log on the fire territory. This is carefully nurse a tiny flame for 45 minutes while protecting it from wind, rain, and your own incompetence territory. And every minute you spend trying to make fire is a minute you're not spending on the other dozen things you need to do to survive the day. Oh, and that growling sound. It's getting closer, so you're cold. You're probably still in the dark, and now you're hungry. Your stomach is making sounds that could probably be heard in the next time zone. In the modern world, this is when you stumble to the kitchen, open the fridge, and choose between 17 different types of yogurt. In the Stone Age, this is when you realize you're completely screwed. First, let's talk about what Stone Age humans ate. Spoiler alert. It wasn't grilled mammoth steaks and cave person salads. Most of their diet consisted of whatever they could scavenge, hunt, or gather. And by scavenge I mean fighting vultures for the privilege of eating something that died 3 days ago. By hunt, I mean chasing animals that are faster, stronger, and better armed than you are. And by gather, I mean knowing the difference between nutritious berry and will kill you in 30 seconds berry. You know what you know about edible plants. Probably nothing. You can identify an apple because it comes with a sticker. You can recognize lettuce because it's pre-washed and comes in a plastic container. But put you in a prehistoric forest and ask you to find breakfast, and you're basically playing Russian roulette with every leaf, root, and berry you encounter. Stone Age humans had encyclopedic knowledge of their local ecosystem. They knew which mushrooms were safe, which bark could be eaten, which roots were nutritious, and which pretty flowers would make you hallucinate before you died. This knowledge was passed down through generations, learned through careful observation, and tested through trial and error. The people who made errors didn't pass down their knowledge because they were too busy being dead. You, meanwhile, can barely keep a houseplant alive. You've killed succulents, plants that are literally designed to survive neglect. You think you're going to successfully forage for breakfast in an environment where one wrong choice means game over. Let's say you decide to try hunting instead. Great plan, except you have no weapons. No bow, no arrows, no spear, no trap. Just your bare hands, and the kind of hunting experience that comes from occasionally swatting flies. Stone Age humans crafted their tools from scratch. They knew how to knap flint to create razor-sharp edges. They could fashion spears from wood and bone. They understood animal behavior, tracking, and the patience required to wait motionless for hours for the right moment to strike. You get impatient waiting for the microwave to finish heating your leftover pizza. But even if you somehow manage to craft a weapon, you'd still need to catch something. And here's the thing about Stone Age prey animals. They didn't evolve to be convenient. They evolved to not get eaten. That rabbit you're looking at, it can run 35 miles per hour. That deer over there, it has hearing so acute it can detect your heartbeat from 50 yards away. And that mammoth you're fantasizing about, it weighs 8 tons and has tusks that could turn you into a human shish kebab. Modern humans are persistence hunters, meaning we're designed to run long distances to exhaust our prey. But that only works if you're in the kind of physical condition that comes from running everywhere you go for your entire life. You're in the kind of physical condition that comes from running to catch the bus twice a year, and considering it exercise. Plus, persistence hunting requires you to track wounded animals across vast distances, sometimes for days. You need to read signs in the dirt, follow blood trails, understand animal behavior patterns. You can't even follow GPS directions without getting lost. You think you're going to successfully track a wounded elk through unmarked wilderness. And let's not forget about the other hunters. You're not the only one looking for breakfast. There are cave lions, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and cave bears. All of them are better at hunting than you are. All of them are stronger, faster, and more experienced. And all of them are perfectly willing to upgrade from hunting your breakfast to hunting you. So there you are, still cold, still hungry, and now being stalked by something that considers you a convenient snack. The sun is coming up, which is good because you can finally see what's around you, which is bad because now you can see what's around you. The sun is up, and you've somehow made it through the night without being eaten. Congratulations. You've survived longer than most people expected. Now it's time to start your day, which means it's time to travel. Because unlike modern humans, who can live in one place and have food delivered to them, Stone Age humans were nomadic. They had to follow the herds, chase the seasons, and constantly move to find resources. You know what your longest walk was last month, probably from your car to the store entrance, and you complained about not finding a closer parking spot. Stone Age humans walked everywhere, not walked like leisurely stroll through the park, walked. We're talking about covering 10-20 miles a day across terrain that would make modern hiking trails look like sidewalks. No paths, no markers, no bridges over streams, no scenic overlook rest stops with clean bathrooms and vending machines. Just endless wilderness in every direction. And you have to navigate it using nothing but the sun, stars and landmarks that all look exactly the same when you're lost and panicking. Your feet pampered by years of cushioned shoes, orthotic inserts, and never walking further than necessary, are about to discover what real pain feels like. Stone Age humans developed thick, calloused feet from a lifetime of walking on rocks, thorns, and rough terrain. Your feet are soft, tender, and about as prepared for this as a souffle is for a motorcycle accident. Within the first mile, you'll have blisters. Within the second mile, those blisters will burst. By mile 3, you'll be leaving bloody footprints and seriously reconsidering your life choices. But you can't stop, because stopping means falling behind, and falling behind means becoming something's lunch. The terrain isn't just challenging it, it's actively trying to kill you. Rivers that need to be crossed, with currents strong enough to sweep you away, and water cold enough to stop your heart. Cliffs that need to be scaled, with loose rocks that could send you tumbling to your death. Swamps that could swallow you whole, quicksand that could trap you until you starve, and thorny underbrush that could shred your skin to ribbons. And you're doing all of this while carrying everything you own. Your entire worldly possessions need to fit in your hands or on your back, because there's no storage unit, no house to leave things in, no car to carry your stuff. Every tool, every scrap of food, every piece of clothing has to be transported by human power alone. Stone Age humans were incredibly minimalist by necessity. They carried only what was absolutely essential for survival. You, meanwhile, panic if you leave the house without your phone charger, your wallet, your keys, your water bottle, your snacks, your hand sanitizer, and whatever else you've convinced yourself you can't live without. But wait, there's more. You're not just walking. You're walking while constantly watching for threats. Predators don't take breaks. They don't respect your need for rest. They're always hunting, always watching, always ready to turn you into their next meal. You need to maintain constant vigilance while navigating difficult terrain, carrying heavy loads, and dealing with exhaustion, hunger, and pain. Your modern brain, trained to focus on one thing at a time, is completely overwhelmed. You're supposed to watch for predators, while watching your footing, while navigating, while carrying supplies, while looking for food, while staying with the group, while dealing with increasingly severe physical discomfort. It's like trying to juggle while riding a unicycle, while solving math problems, while being chased by wolves. Speaking of the group, let's talk about keeping up. Stone Age humans moved as a unit for protection and efficiency. The group moved at a pace that worked for the majority, and if you couldn't keep up, you were left behind. There was no let's take a break, because Thomas is tired. There was no we'll slow down until everyone catches up. The group moved when conditions were right, at the speed that maximized survival chances, and individual comfort was not a factor. You know what happens when you can't keep up with the group. You die, alone, slowly, while being eaten by scavengers, because humans are pack animals, and lone humans in the Stone Age were dead humans.
Let's talk about weather, because in the Stone Age, weather wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a constant threat to your existence. You think you know about bad weather because you've been caught in the rain without an umbrella, or because your flight was delayed due to snow. But Stone Age weather was like nature's way of saying, I don't think you belong here.
First, let's establish what you're working with for clothing. If you're incredibly lucky, you might have some animal skins that previous humans managed to hunt, kill, and process into something resembling clothing. But processing animal hides into wearable clothing is a complex, time-consuming process that requires specific tools, knowledge, and materials that you don't have. You have to skin the animal without damaging the hide. You have to clean off all the fat and meat without leaving any that will rot. You have to treat the hide with animal brains. Yes, brains, to soften it. You have to scrape it, stretch it, and work it until it's pliable. This process takes days, requires constant attention, and can be ruined by a single mistake. More likely, you're wearing whatever plant fibers you manage to weave together, assuming you know how to weave, which you don't. So you're probably wearing something that resembles clothing, about as much as a paper bag resembles a hazmat suit. Now let's add weather to this equation. Stone Age climates were extreme and unpredictable. We're talking about ice ages, where temperatures plummeted far below anything you've experienced. Summers that could kill you with heat stroke. Storms that could flatten everything in their path. And all of this with no warning system, no weather forecast, no way to prepare beyond pure survival instinct. When it rains, you get wet. Not I should grab a jacket wet. Soaked to the bone, hypothermia inducing, possibly deadly wet. Your inadequate clothing becomes heavy, uncomfortable, and useless. Your body temperature drops. You start shivering uncontrollably. Your muscles stop working properly. Your brain stops thinking clearly. And you still have to keep moving, keep working, keep trying to survive. Modern humans die of hypothermia in conditions that Stone Age humans considered mildly chilly. You've probably never been truly cold in your life. You've never experienced the kind of cold that makes your bones ache, your joints lock up, and your fingers too numb to grip anything. You've never had to work, hunt, and think while your body is shutting down from cold. But maybe it's summer. Maybe you're thinking hot weather would be easier. Think again. Stone Age summers meant no air conditioning, no cold drinks, no shade structures, no relief from the heat. You're walking long distances in direct sunlight, wearing whatever crude clothing you managed to cobble together, with no way to cool off except finding water sources that might be contaminated with diseases that will kill you. Heat exhaustion, heat stroke, dehydration, sunburn that actually damages your skin, rather than just making you slightly uncomfortable. And you're doing all of this while maintaining the same level of alertness, physical activity, and survival focus that every other aspect of Stone Age life requires. Then there are the storms. Not I should bring in the patio furniture. Storms. We're talking about prehistoric tempests that could level forests, flash floods that could wash away entire campsites, hail that could stone you to death, and lightning that could turn you into a crispy critter with no warning. You have no sturdy shelter. You have no early warning system. You have no emergency services to rescue you. When a storm hits, you're completely at the mercy of natural forces that don't care about your survival. Your flimsy shelter becomes a death trap. Your carefully gathered supplies get scattered or destroyed. Your fire goes out. Your food gets ruined. And you're back to square one, except now you're also dealing with the aftermath of a natural disaster. Stone Age humans had generational knowledge about reading weather patterns, finding shelter, and protecting themselves from environmental threats. They knew which clouds meant rain, which winds meant storms, which seasonal changes meant danger. They could predict weather changes hours or days in advance, based on subtle environmental cues that you wouldn't notice if they came with neon signs. You check your weather app and complain if it's wrong about the temperature by 2 degrees. You think you're going to successfully predict prehistoric weather patterns using your modern meteorological knowledge, which is essentially none. Water. It's everywhere in the modern world. Turn a handle, and clean, drinkable water comes out. Press a button, and filtered water is dispensed. Walk into any store, and you can buy water that's been purified, treated, and bottled for your convenience. You probably don't even think about water, except when you're mildly annoyed that your coffee tastes slightly different because of the local water supply. In the Stone Age, water was life or death, not metaphorically, literally. Find clean water, and you might survive another day. Drink contaminated water, and you'll die slowly and painfully from diseases that don't exist in the modern world, because we've eliminated them through sanitation and water treatment. Let's start with finding water. You know what natural water sources look like, because you've seen them in movies and nature documentaries. Rivers, streams, lakes, springs, all clearly marked, and obviously safe to drink from. Right, wrong. So incredibly wrong that you're basically committing suicide by ignorance. That clear, babbling brook, that looks so refreshing. It might be contaminated with animal waste, rotting vegetation, or the remains of something that died upstream. That pristine mountain lake, it could be full of parasites, bacteria, or natural toxins that will make you wish you'd never been born. That spring that looks like it's coming straight from pure rock, it might be carrying minerals that will shut down your kidneys. Stone Age humans had detailed knowledge of water sources in their territory. They knew which streams were safe during which seasons, which springs were reliable, which areas to avoid after rain, and how to identify clean water versus contaminated water. This knowledge was literally the difference between life and death, passed down through generations of trial and error. You can't tell the difference between tap water and bottled water in a blind taste test. You think you're going to successfully identify safe drinking water in an environment where one wrong choice means dying of dysentery in the wilderness. But let's say you manage to find what looks like safe water. Great. Now you need to transport it. You have no bottles, no containers, no way to carry water with you. Stone Age humans crafted containers from gourds, animal stomachs, woven baskets sealed with pine pitch, and other materials that required specific knowledge and skills to create. You're going to weave a watertight basket from scratch, with no tools, no experience, and no instruction manual. You're going to successfully remove, clean, and prepare an animal stomach for use as a water container. You're going to identify the right type of plant materials, harvest them properly, and create a functional container that won't leak or contaminate your water. Even if you somehow manage to create a container, you still need to purify the water. Boiling water kills most pathogens, but that requires fire, which we've already established you can't make. It also requires a container that can withstand heat without melting, breaking, or contaminating the water. And it requires fuel to keep the fire going long enough to properly sterilize the water. Stone Age humans had other methods of water purification. They used certain plants as natural filters, allowed water to settle and clarify in containers, and new techniques for removing impurities. But these methods required specific knowledge about which plants were effective, how to use them properly, and how to tell when water was safe to drink. You probably don't even know what water purification tablets are, let alone how to make natural water filters from Stone Age materials. And here's the thing about water in the Stone Age: you need a lot of it. You're doing intense physical activity all day long. You're exposed to elements that dehydrate you rapidly. You're probably eating foods that require extra water to digest. You're dealing with stress, illness, and injuries that increase your water needs. The rule of thumb is that you can survive about 3 days without water, but you'll start experiencing serious problems within hours. Dehydration doesn't just make you thirsty, it makes you weak, confused, and unable to make good decisions. Your physical performance decreases, your immune system becomes compromised, your body temperature regulation stops working properly, and in an environment where peak physical and mental performance is required for survival, becoming dehydrated is essentially signing your own death warrant. Modern humans are chronically mildly dehydrated because we've replaced water with coffee, soda, and other beverages that actually require water to process. Your body is already operating at a deficit, and you're about to put it under the most extreme stress it's ever experienced. Night is coming, and you need shelter. Not "I should close the windows" shelter. We're talking about protection from elements that could kill you, predators that want to eat you, and temperatures that could freeze you solid. You know what your housing situation looks like. It's about to become a masterclass in why humans spent thousands of years developing architecture. First, let's talk about materials. You need to build shelter using only what's available in your immediate environment. No lumber yard, no hardware store, no Amazon delivery of construction supplies. Just whatever you can find, carry, and work with using primitive tools or no tools at all. Stone Age humans built shelters from branches, animal hides, stones, mud, and whatever else they could scavenge. But they knew which materials worked best for different conditions, how to process them properly, and how to combine them into structures that would actually provide protection. They understood concepts like structural integrity, water resistance, and insulation through generations of experience. You once tried to assemble IKEA furniture and ended up with 3 extra screws and a bookshelf that leaned like the Tower of Pisa. You think you're going to successfully construct weatherproof shelter from raw materials with no instructions, no tools, and no experience. Let's say you decide to build a simple lean-to. Seems easy enough, right? Find some branches, lean them against something, cover them with whatever you can find. Except finding the right branches is harder than you think. You need wood that's strong enough to support weight but flexible enough to work with. You need pieces that are the right size for your structure. You need materials that aren't rotten, infested with insects or contaminated with things that will make you sick. Stone Age humans could identify different types of wood by sight, knew which trees produced the best building materials, and understood how to work with various materials to create strong, stable structures. They knew which wood was best for framework, which materials provided the best insulation, and how to connect pieces together without nails, screws, or modern fasteners. You probably can't tell the difference between pine and oak, let alone identify which types of wood are suitable for construction. You're going to harvest branches using your bare hands, which means you're going to get injured. You're going to cut yourself on sharp edges, get splinters embedded in your skin, and probably drop something heavy on your foot. And these aren't minor inconveniences. Any injury in the Stone Age could become infected and kill you. But let's say you somehow gather your materials. Now you need to construct something that will actually protect you. Your lean-to needs to be positioned correctly to avoid wind, rain, and predators. It needs to be constructed properly, so it won't collapse on you in the middle of the night. It needs to be insulated enough to keep you warm but ventilated enough to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, if you manage to get a fire going inside. Stone Age humans understood principles of engineering that you've never thought about. They knew how to create structures that would shed water, how to position shelters to take advantage of natural wind breaks, and how to design entrances that could be quickly sealed in case of danger. You're going to build a shelter that's essentially a pile of sticks held together by hope and delusion. The first strong wind will knock it over. The first rain will turn it into a soggy mess. The first predator will walk right through it like it's not even there. And speaking of predators, let's talk about security. Your shelter needs to protect you from things that want to eat you. Cave bears, saber-toothed cats, packs of wolves, and other humans who might decide you have something they want. Modern homes have locks, alarm systems, and walls that can't be easily broken through. Your Stone Age shelter has wishful thinking and a prayer. Stone Age humans built their shelters with defense in mind. They positioned them in locations that were naturally protected, created barriers that would slow down or deter predators, and designed entrances that could be quickly secured. They understood that shelter wasn't just about weather protection, it was about creating a safe space where they could rest without being killed. Your shelter is going to be about as secure as a tent made of tissue paper. Any predator that wants to get to you will have no trouble doing so. And unlike modern homes, where you can call for help or escape through multiple exits, your Stone Age shelter is probably a dead end that traps you inside with whatever wants to eat you.
You've somehow survived the day, and now you're facing the reality of dinner. Not what should I order from DoorDash dinner. We're talking about find something edible or starve to death. Dinner. And unlike breakfast, where you might have gotten lucky and found some berries, dinner requires actual hunting skills, trapping knowledge, or advanced foraging abilities that you definitely don't possess. Let's start with the obvious choice. Fishing. Water means fish, and fish means protein. Seems simple enough, right? You've been fishing before. You've seen people catch fish. How hard could it be? Stone Age fishing wasn't sitting in a boat with a rod and reel waiting for something to bite. It was about crafting fishing tools from scratch, understanding fish behavior, and knowing when and where to fish for different species. Stone Age humans made fish hooks from bone, fashioned spears for larger fish, built traps from reeds and branches,
and new techniques for catching fish with their bare hands. You're going to make a fish hook from bone. First, you need to find the right type of bone. Then you need to shape it into a hook that will actually hold fish. Then you need to attach it to a line made from plant fibers or animal sinew that you've processed yourself. Then you need to find bait that will attract fish. And then you need to know where fish are likely to be, what time of day they're most active, and how to avoid scaring them away. Stone Age humans spent their entire lives perfecting these skills. They knew which bones made the best hooks, which plants produced the strongest fibers, which baits worked for different fish, and which locations were most productive. They could read water like a book, identifying where fish were likely to be based on current, depth, vegetation, and other factors. You can barely operate a modern fishing rod without getting the line tangled. You think you're going to successfully craft fishing equipment from raw materials and catch dinner with it. But let's say you decide to try trap hunting instead, building snares and deadfalls to catch small animals while you're doing other things. Great idea, except trap hunting requires deep knowledge of animal behavior, precise construction skills, and materials that you don't have access to. Different animals require different types of traps. Rabbits move differently than squirrels. Birds have different feeding patterns than ground animals. Each type of trap needs to be positioned correctly, baited appropriately, and checked regularly to be effective. And building traps that actually work requires understanding engineering principles that Stone Age humans learned through years of practice. You need to know where animals travel, what they eat, how they react to threats, and when they're most active. You need to understand wind patterns, because animals can smell human scent from far away. You need to know how to approach and check traps without scaring away future prey. You need to know which materials are strong enough to hold struggling animals, and which will break under pressure. Stone Age humans could track animals by reading signs in the dirt, identify different species by their droppings, and predict animal behavior based on seasonal patterns. They knew which animals were worth trapping, which were too dangerous to mess with, and which were likely to be carrying diseases that could kill you. You probably can't tell the difference between cat poop and dog poop, let alone identify wild animal signs and predict their behavior patterns. And here's the thing about traps: they fail most of the time. Even expertly crafted traps by experienced hunters succeed only a small percentage of the time. You're going to build amateur traps with no experience, no proper materials, and no knowledge of animal behavior. Your success rate is going to be approximately 0. But maybe you're thinking about hunting larger prey. After all, one deer could feed you for days. Except hunting large animals in the Stone Age was typically a group activity that required coordination, specialized weapons, and tactical knowledge that took years to develop. Stone Age hunters worked in teams, using complex strategies to drive animals toward waiting spears or into natural traps. They knew how to approach different animals, how to predict their movements, and how to work together to bring down prey that was stronger and faster than any individual human. You're one person with no weapons, no hunting experience, and no knowledge of animal behavior. You're going to take down a deer that can run 30 miles per hour, has senses far superior to yours, and has been avoiding predators its entire life. You're going to successfully hunt an animal that evolution has been optimizing for survival for millions of years. Even if you somehow manage to kill an animal, you'd still need to process it correctly. Field dressing, butchering, and preserving meat requires specific knowledge about anatomy, food safety, and preservation techniques. One mistake, and you'll contaminate the meat with bacteria that will kill you. Another mistake, and you'll waste most of the usable meat because you don't know how to properly break down an animal carcass. Stone Age humans used every part of the animal. They knew which organs were edible, which parts spoiled quickly, and how to preserve meat for future consumption. They understood which cuts were best for immediate consumption, and which needed to be processed differently for long-term storage. You've probably never seen meat that wasn't already cut up and packaged. You think you're going to successfully butcher an entire animal using Stone Age tools and techniques. The sun is setting, and you're about to discover what real darkness looks like. Not "I should turn on a light" darkness. We're talking about the kind of absolute, complete darkness that makes you question whether you still exist. Stone Age nights were darker than anything you've experienced in your modern life, and they were filled with sounds, smells and movements that would make horror movies seem like children's bedtime stories. First, let's talk about light. You have no electricity, no batteries, no flashlights, no candles, no gas lamps. Your only potential light source is fire, which we've already established you can't make. So you're going to spend the next 12 mighted 14 hours in complete darkness, depending on the season and your location. Stone Age humans had mastered fire not just for warmth and cooking, but for protection and illumination. They knew how to keep fires burning all night, how to bank coals for easy rekindling, and how to create torches for portable light. They understood which materials burned brightest, which lasted longest, and how to manage fire safely in enclosed spaces. You can't even keep a campfire going at summer camp without it either going out or getting dangerously out of control. You think you're going to successfully manage fire for survival in Stone Age conditions, but let's say you somehow manage to get a small fire going. Congratulations, you've just announced your location to every predator in a 5-mile radius. Fire means humans, and humans mean potential food or threat. You've essentially put up a neon sign that says free dinner to everything that hunts at night. Stone Age humans knew how to use fire strategically. They understood when fire provided protection versus when it made them vulnerable. They knew how to position fires to maximize benefits while minimizing risks. They had group strategies for fire management that balance safety, warmth and defense. You're going to sit next to your pathetic little fire, like a beacon of vulnerability, advertising your presence to every dangerous animal in the area. And when your fire inevitably goes out because you don't know how to maintain it, you'll be left in complete darkness with the knowledge that everything nearby knows exactly where you are. Now let's talk about the sounds. Stone Age nights were filled with the sounds of animals hunting, fighting, mating and dying. Howls, growls, screams and other sounds that would make your blood run cold. And unlike modern nights, where you can identify most sounds as cars, airplanes or neighbors, Stone Age sounds were mostly unidentifiable threats. Different sounds meant different dangers. The crack of a branch could mean a large predator was approaching. Strange calls could indicate pack animals communicating about potential prey. Silence could mean something was stalking you. Stone Age humans learned to interpret these sounds, understanding which represented immediate danger and which were just background noise. You can't even tell the difference between a dog barking and a coyote howling. You think you're going to successfully interpret the complex soundscape of a Stone Age night and identify actual threats versus harmless animals. Every sound is going to make you jump. Every silence is going to make you paranoid. Every unexpected noise is going to convince you that death is approaching. And here's the thing, sometimes you'll be right. Sometimes that sound will be a predator. Sometimes that movement will be something hunting you, and you'll have no way to tell the difference until it's too late. Your shelter, which seemed adequate during the day, is now going to feel like a paper-thin barrier between you and everything that wants to kill you. Every sound will seem like it's coming from inside your shelter. Every shadow will look like a predator. Every movement will make you question whether your walls are strong enough to keep anything out. Stone Age humans slept in shifts, with some members of the group always awake and alert. They had systems for detecting and responding to threats, weapons ready for immediate use, and escape routes planned for different scenarios. They understood that night was when humans were most vulnerable, and they planned accordingly. You're going to try to sleep alone, in an inadequate shelter, with no weapons, no backup plan, and no idea what's actually dangerous versus what's just scary. You're going to lie awake all night, jumping at every sound, convinced that every moment might be your last. And here's the really terrifying part. You'll probably be right to be scared. Night was when most predators were active. Night was when humans were most likely to be attacked, killed or eaten. Night was when inadequate shelter, poor planning, and lack of preparation became fatal mistakes. Your modern brain, used to safe environments and artificial lighting, is going to be completely overwhelmed by the sensory experience of a Stone Age night. You're going to be paralyzed by fear, exhausted by hypervigilance, and completely unable to get the rest you need to survive the next day.
Let's talk about sleep, because in the Stone Age, sleep wasn't just rest, it was a carefully managed survival strategy that balanced the need for recovery
with the need to stay alive. And you, with your modern sleep habits, your memory foam mattress, your climate-controlled bedroom, and your white noise machine, are about to discover what real sleep deprivation looks like. First, let's address your sleeping surface. You're used to a bed that's been engineered for comfort, with springs, padding, and materials designed to support your body and regulate temperature. Your Stone Age bed is the ground. Maybe you've managed to gather some grass, leaves, or pine needles to create a slightly softer surface, but you're essentially sleeping on dirt, rocks, and whatever debris you couldn't clear away. Stone Age humans had techniques for creating more comfortable sleeping areas. They knew which materials provided the best insulation from cold ground, which plants made the softest bedding, and how to arrange sleeping areas to maximize warmth and minimize discomfort. They understood that proper rest was essential for survival, and they invested significant time and effort in creating the best sleeping conditions possible under primitive circumstances. You've probably never slept on anything harder than a hotel mattress that you complained about online. You think you're going to get restful sleep on a bed made of sticks and wishful thinking. But the hardness of your sleeping surface is just the beginning. You're also dealing with temperature regulation without any of the tools you're used to. No blankets, no sheets, no climate control. If you're cold, you stay cold. If you're hot, you stay hot. Stone Age humans used animal furs, processed plant materials, and strategic positioning to maintain body temperature during sleep. They knew how to layer different materials for maximum insulation, how to position their bodies to conserve heat, and how to create microclimates within their sleeping areas. They understood that maintaining proper body temperature during sleep wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. You get uncomfortable if your room is 2 degrees warmer than usual. You think you're going to successfully regulate your body temperature using primitive materials and techniques you've never practiced. Then there's the issue of safety during sleep. In the modern world, sleep is when you're most vulnerable, but you're protected by locks, alarm systems, and the general safety of civilized society. In the Stone Age, sleep was when predators were most active, and you had no protection beyond whatever pathetic shelter you managed to construct. Stone Age humans slept in groups for protection, with rotating watch schedules and defensive positioning. They knew how to sleep lightly, waking instantly at the first sign of danger. They positioned themselves near weapons and escape routes, and they understood that deep sleep was a luxury they couldn't afford. You sleep through fire alarms, ignore your phone ringing, and need multiple alarm clocks to wake up for work. You think you're going to successfully maintain the kind of alert awareness that Stone Age survival required. But let's say you somehow manage to fall asleep despite the discomfort, the fear, and the constant awareness of danger. You're still not going to get quality sleep. Your modern brain is going to be completely overwhelmed by the sensory input of a Stone Age night. Every sound will wake you up. Every change in temperature will disturb your rest. Every shift in your uncomfortable sleeping position will remind you of how miserable you are. Stone Age humans had adapted to sleeping in challenging conditions. Their bodies and minds were accustomed to irregular sleep patterns, uncomfortable sleeping surfaces, and constant low-level alertness. They could function effectively on broken sleep and could quickly recover from sleep deprivation when conditions allowed. You get grumpy and unfocused if you don't get your full 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep in perfect conditions. You think you're going to maintain peak physical and mental performance on a few hours of fitful rest in survival conditions. And here's the really devastating part. Poor sleep is going to make every other aspect of your Stone Age survival exponentially more difficult. Sleep deprivation affects your immune system, your decision-making abilities, your physical coordination, and your emotional regulation. You're going to be more prone to accidents, more likely to make fatal mistakes, and less able to cope with the constant stress of survival. Stone Age humans understood the importance of sleep and had cultural practices and group strategies for ensuring that everyone got adequate rest. They knew that a sleep-deprived group member was a liability for the entire community, and they had systems in place to manage sleep schedules and protect sleeping members. You're going to be operating on your own, with no backup systems, no support network, and no understanding of how to manage sleep in survival conditions. You're going to be increasingly exhausted, increasingly impaired, and increasingly likely to make the kind of mistake that gets you killed. Let's talk about what happens when you get sick or injured in the Stone Age, because spoiler alert, you're going to get sick and injured. A lot, and there's no urgent care clinic, no pharmacy, no emergency room, and no health insurance to help you deal with it. There's just you, your failing body, and whatever primitive remedies you can figure out before you die. First, let's address the elephant in the room. You're going to get injured within hours of your Stone Age experience beginning. Walking on rough terrain with inadequate footwear, handling sharp objects without proper tools, trying to build shelter with no experience, attempting to make fire with your bare hands. Every activity is going to result in cuts, scrapes, bruises, and more serious injuries. In the modern world, minor injuries are inconveniences. You clean them with antiseptic, cover them with bandages, and forget about them. In the Stone Age, minor injuries are potential death sentences. Every cut is a pathway for infection. Every scrape is an opportunity for bacteria to enter your bloodstream. Every bruise could be hiding internal damage that will kill you slowly. Stone Age humans had knowledge of medicinal plants, natural antiseptics, and wound care techniques that had been developed over thousands of years. They knew which plants could prevent infection, which materials made the best bandages, and how to treat different types of injuries using only natural materials. You probably can't even properly clean a paper cut without antibacterial soap and adhesive bandages. You think you're going to successfully treat serious wounds using plants and mud. But let's say you manage to avoid serious injury for a few days. You're still going to get sick. Your immune system, pampered by modern medicine, sanitation, and processed foods, is about to encounter pathogens that it's never seen before. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, and toxins that your body has no defense against. Stone Age humans had immune systems that were constantly challenged by environmental threats. They had been exposed to local pathogens from birth, and their bodies had developed resistance to many diseases. They also had cultural knowledge about which foods were safe, which water sources were clean, and which plants could be used to treat various ailments. You get sick from eating at restaurants that don't maintain perfect hygiene standards. You think you're going to successfully avoid illness while eating unprocessed food, drinking untreated water, and living in unsanitary conditions. Stomach problems are going to be your constant companion. Diarrhea, vomiting, intestinal parasites, food poisoning. Your digestive system is going to be under constant assault from unfamiliar foods, contaminated water, and bacterial infections. And unlike modern stomach problems, which you can treat with over-the-counter medications, Stone Age digestive issues could literally kill you through dehydration and malnutrition. Stone Age humans knew which plants could treat digestive problems, how to prepare medicinal teas and poultices, and how to manage illness while maintaining the physical activity required for survival. They understood that illness was often a death sentence, and they had developed sophisticated herbal medicine practices to give themselves the best chance of recovery. You take Pepto-Bismol for minor stomach discomfort, and consider yourself medically knowledgeable. You think you're going to successfully treat serious illness using plant-based remedies you've never heard of. Then there are the infections. Every minor cut, every insect bite, every scrape is going to become infected. Your body, used to sterile environments and antibiotic treatments, is going to be overwhelmed by bacterial infections that Stone Age humans dealt with routinely. Infected wounds don't just hurt Mitch, they can kill you. Blood poisoning, gangrene, sepsis, these are real risks when you can't properly clean and treat injuries. And in the Stone Age, there was no surgery, no antibiotics, no advanced medical intervention. If an infection got serious enough, your options were amputation with crude tools or death. Stone Age humans had techniques for preventing and treating infections using natural materials. They knew which plants had antimicrobial properties, how to clean wounds effectively, and when drastic measures like amputation were necessary. They also had pain management techniques using natural substances and meditation practices. You've probably never experienced serious pain without pharmaceutical intervention. You think you're going to successfully perform primitive surgery on yourself using stone tools and herbal anesthetics. And let's not forget about the chronic conditions that you probably already have. Allergies, asthma, diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression. Conditions that are manageable in the modern world but fatal in the Stone Age. You're dependent on medications, treatments and lifestyle modifications that simply don't exist in prehistoric times. Stone Age humans who had serious medical conditions simply died. Natural selection was harsh and unforgiving. If you couldn't function effectively without medical intervention, you weren't going to survive long enough to reproduce and pass on your genes. You need prescription medications to function normally in the modern world. You think you're going to successfully manage chronic medical conditions using Stone Age healthcare.
Let's talk about personal hygiene. Because in the Stone Age, staying clean wasn't about looking good or smelling pleasant. It was about staying alive. And your modern hygiene routine, with its daily showers, antibacterial soaps, and specialized products, has left you completely unprepared for managing cleanliness in an environment where poor hygiene could literally kill you. First, let's address the obvious. You're going to get dirty. Not, I should wash my hands dirty. We're talking about ground in filth, accumulated grime, and layers of dirt that become part of your skin. You're walking through mud, sleeping on the ground, handling animal carcasses, and living in conditions where clean water is a precious resource that you can't waste on bathing. Stone Age humans had strategies for staying as clean as possible, given their circumstances. They knew which plants could be used for soap, how to find and heat water for washing, and how to prioritize cleanliness to prevent illness. They understood that certain types of dirt were harmless, while others could cause serious health problems. You probably use more water in a single shower than Stone Age humans had access to in a week. You think you're going to successfully maintain adequate hygiene using primitive resources and techniques. But staying clean isn't just about comfort, it's about preventing disease. Your skin is your body's first line of defense against pathogens, and when it's compromised by dirt, cuts, and poor hygiene, you become vulnerable to infections that can kill you. Skin diseases, fungal infections, and bacterial invasions that would be minor annoyances in the modern world become serious threats when you can't properly treat them. Stone Age humans had knowledge of medicinal plants that could treat skin conditions, techniques for preventing fungal infections, and strategies for managing wounds and injuries in unsanitary conditions. They knew which natural materials had antiseptic properties and how to use them effectively. You probably can't identify poison ivy, let alone medicinal plants that could treat skin infections. You think you're going to successfully prevent and treat skin diseases using natural remedies you've never heard of. Then there's the issue of dental hygiene. Your teeth are going to become a serious problem very quickly. Without toothpaste, dental floss, or regular cleaning, your mouth is going to become a breeding ground for bacteria that can cause not just tooth decay, but serious systemic infections. Stone Age humans had shorter lifespans, partly because dental problems often led to fatal infections. They chewed on certain plants that had cleaning properties, used primitive tools to remove debris from their teeth, and had techniques for managing dental pain. But they also frequently died from tooth-related infections that spread to their blood or brain. You probably skip brushing your teeth sometimes and have never experienced serious dental pain. You think you're going to successfully maintain oral health using sticks and leaves. But perhaps the most serious hygiene issue is waste management. Your modern bathroom, with its running water, sewage systems, and toilet paper, has completely separated you from the realities of human waste disposal. In the Stone Age, improper waste management meant contamination, disease, and death. Stone Age humans knew how to manage human waste to prevent contamination of water sources, food supplies, and living areas. They understood which locations were appropriate for waste disposal, how to cover and contain waste materials, and how to prevent waste-related diseases from spreading through their communities. You probably can't dig a proper latrine, don't know how to prevent waste contamination, and have never thought about the connection between waste management and disease prevention. You think you're going to successfully manage human waste in survival conditions without causing serious health problems. And let's not forget about parasites. Your modern sanitized lifestyle has protected you from the vast majority of parasites that plague humans in unsanitary conditions. Intestinal worms, skin parasites, blood-sucking insects, and other organisms that view your body as a convenient host and food source. Stone Age humans dealt with parasites as a constant fact of life. They knew which plants could be used to treat parasitic infections,
how to prevent parasitic diseases, and how to manage chronic parasitic conditions. They also understood that certain parasites were relatively harmless, while others could be fatal. You've probably never even seen a parasite, let alone dealt with a parasitic infection. You think you're going to successfully prevent and treat parasitic diseases using Stone Age medicine. The reality is that poor hygiene is going to make you sick, and being sick is going to make it even harder to maintain proper hygiene. It's a downward spiral that Stone Age humans had to carefully manage to survive, and you have no experience with any of the techniques they used. Here's something that might surprise you. Stone Age humans didn't live alone. They lived in tight-knit communities where everyone had specific roles, responsibilities, and skills that contributed to group survival. And you, with your modern individualistic mindset and complete lack of useful Stone Age skills, are about to discover why these communities wouldn't want you as a member. Stone Age communities were built on mutual dependence and shared expertise. Everyone contributed something valuable to the group's survival. There were specialists in hunting, gathering, tool-making, medicine, child-rearing, and dozens of other essential skills. People earned their place in the community through competence, reliability, and ability to contribute to the group's welfare. What exactly are you going to contribute? You can't hunt, can't gather food safely, can't make tools, can't build shelter, can't treat injuries, can't predict weather, can't identify edible plants, and can't defend the group from threats. You're essentially a burden that consumes resources without providing any benefit in return. Stone Age communities couldn't afford to support non-productive members. Every calorie of food, every resource, every effort had to be carefully managed for maximum survival benefit. Taking care of someone who couldn't contribute meant less food for everyone else, increased risk for the group, and reduced chances of survival. You're used to being valued for abstract skills like spreadsheet management, social media marketing, or customer service. None of these skills have any survival value in the Stone Age. You're going to be viewed as a liability, not an asset. But let's say a Stone Age community was willing to take you in temporarily. You'd still need to learn their customs, follow their rules, and adapt to their social structure. Stone Age communities had complex social hierarchies, unwritten rules, and cultural practices that governed everything from food distribution to mating rituals. These weren't democratic societies where everyone had equal say in decisions. They were hierarchical communities where status was based on competence, experience, and contribution to group welfare. Elders, skilled hunters, and experienced gatherers had authority and respect. New members, especially incompetent new members, were at the bottom of the social hierarchy. You're used to having rights, legal protections, and social safety nets. In Stone Age communities, your status and treatment depended entirely on your value to the group. Make too many mistakes, consume too many resources, or fail to contribute adequately, and you could be exiled or abandoned. Stone Age communities also had their own languages, cultural practices, and communication methods that you don't understand. They had complex systems of non-verbal communication, shared cultural knowledge, and group dynamics that took years to learn and master. You probably can't even successfully integrate into a new workplace without months of training and orientation. You think you're going to successfully adapt to a Stone Age community with completely different cultural norms, communication methods, and survival priorities. And here's the really harsh reality. Stone Age communities often had to make brutal decisions about resource allocation during times of scarcity. When food was scarce, the elderly, injured, or non-productive members might be left behind or abandoned. When the group needed to move quickly, those who couldn't keep up were sometimes sacrificed for the survival of the majority. These weren't evil people making evil decisions. These were communities making rational choices about resource allocation in life or death situations. Every decision was based on maximizing the group's chances of survival, even if it meant sacrificing individuals who couldn't contribute. You're going to be one of those individuals. You're going to be the person who can't keep up, can't contribute adequately, and consumes more resources than you provide. And when the community is forced to make hard decisions about who stays and who goes, you're going to be expendable. Stone Age communities were also constantly in conflict with other groups over resources, territory, and survival. They needed members who could fight, defend the group, and contribute to warfare when necessary. They needed people who could scout enemy positions, construct defensive barriers, and manufacture weapons. You probably can't even throw a ball accurately, let alone fight with primitive weapons against experienced warriors. You think you're going to successfully defend a Stone Age community from hostile neighbors. The bottom line is that Stone Age communities were survival machines, finely tuned to maximize the chances of group survival in harsh conditions. Every member had to earn their place through competence and contribution. You have neither, and you'd be quickly identified as a liability that the group couldn't afford to support.
Let's be honest about how this story ends, because despite your best efforts, your Stone Age adventure is going to conclude with your death. Not eventually, not in old age, not peacefully in your sleep. We're talking about dying young, probably painfully, and certainly in a way that would make modern medical examiners write very interesting reports. The average lifespan in the Stone Age was somewhere between 25 and 35 years, and that includes infant mortality bringing down the average. But even if you survived childhood, you weren't looking at a long, comfortable life. You were looking at a few decades of constant struggle, followed by death from causes that modern medicine could easily prevent or treat. Let's talk about the most likely ways you're going to die, because understanding your probable fate might help you appreciate your modern life a little more. First, there's death by predation, being eaten by something larger and more dangerous than you. This could happen on your first night when a cave bear decides your pathetic shelter isn't worth respecting. It could happen while you're trying to hunt when you become the prey instead of the predator. It could happen while you're gathering food when you stumble into the territory of something that considers you a convenient snack. Stone Age humans were prey animals. They lived in constant awareness that they were part of the food chain and not at the top of it. They had group strategies for defense, weapons for protection, and knowledge of predator behavior that helped them avoid becoming dinner. You have none of these advantages. You're essentially a walking meal that's advertising its availability to every predator in the area. You're going to be killed and eaten, probably within the first few days of your Stone Age experience. Second, there's death by exposure, freezing to death, dying of heat stroke, succumbing to weather conditions that your body can't handle. This is probably the most likely way you're going to die, and it's going to be slow, uncomfortable, and preventable if you had the knowledge and skills that Stone Age humans possessed. Your body is going to shut down from cold, heat, or exposure to elements that you can't adequately protect yourself from. You're going to die shivering in your inadequate shelter, or collapsed from heat exhaustion, because you couldn't find or create adequate shade. Third, there's death by starvation. You're going to be unable to find adequate food, and your body is going to consume itself trying to stay alive. This is also going to be slow and painful, involving your immune system shutting down, your muscles wasting away, and your organs failing one by one. Stone Age humans had detailed knowledge of food sources, seasonal availability, and food preservation techniques. They knew how to maximize nutrition from limited resources, and how to survive periods of scarcity. You're going to starve surrounded by potential food sources that you can't identify, access, or process safely. Fourth, there's death by disease. Some infection, illness, or medical condition that would be minor in the modern world, but fatal without proper treatment. This could be anything from food poisoning, to infected cut, to parasitic disease, to chronic conditions that you can't manage without modern medicine. Your immune system is going to be overwhelmed by pathogens that it's never encountered. Your body is going to be weakened by poor nutrition, inadequate hygiene, and constant stress. You're going to die from diseases that Stone Age humans had developed resistance to over generations. Fifth, there's death by accident. Falling off a cliff, drowning in a river, being crushed by falling rocks, or any number of accidents that are more likely when you're living in dangerous conditions with no safety equipment or rescue services. Stone Age humans had experience navigating dangerous terrain, assessing risks, and avoiding common accidents. They knew which areas were safe, which activities were dangerous, and how to minimize risks while still accomplishing necessary tasks. You're going to make a stupid mistake that gets you killed.
You're going to fall into something, get trapped somewhere, or injure yourself in a way that would be survivable with modern medical care, but fatal in Stone Age conditions. And here's the really depressing part: your death is going to be meaningless. There's no obituary, no funeral, no memorial service. There's no one to mourn your passing or remember your contribution to the world. You're just going to die, and your body is going to be scavenged by animals, and eventually, there will be no trace that you ever existed. Stone Age humans understood that death was always close, always threatening, and always final. They lived with acceptance of mortality that modern humans can't comprehend. They made peace with the likelihood of early death, and focused on maximizing their chances of survival while they were alive. You're going to spend your final hours in terror, denial, and regret. You're going to die wishing you had appreciated your modern life more, wishing you had learned survival skills, wishing you had made different choices. But mostly, you're going to die wishing you were back in your comfortable, safe, modern world, where death was a distant possibility, rather than an immediate certainty. Conclusion: the reality check you needed. So there you have it. A single day in the Stone Age, and you're dead. Not metaphorically dead, not feeling dead, but actually literally deceased. Killed by conditions that our ancestors survived for hundreds of thousands of years, but that would destroy you in less than 24 hours. The harsh reality is that modern humans have become so dependent on technology, infrastructure, and specialized systems, that we've lost most of the skills that kept our species alive for the vast majority of human history. We've traded survival knowledge for comfort, self-reliance for convenience, and practical skills for abstract capabilities. You can operate a smartphone, but you can't make fire. You can navigate using GPS, but you can't read the stars. You can order food from apps, but you can't identify edible plants. You can video chat with people on the other side of the world, but you can't communicate effectively with the people who could keep you alive in a survival situation. Stone Age humans were incredibly skilled, knowledgeable, and adaptable. They survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, and countless other challenges that would wipe out modern civilization. They did it without technology, without written language, without any of the tools we consider essential for survival. They had something we don't have: the knowledge, skills, and mental toughness required to survive in a hostile environment, using only human ingenuity and natural resources. They were our ancestors, and their survival is the only reason we exist today. But here's the thing: you don't need to survive in the Stone Age. You get to live in the modern world, with all its conveniences, safety systems, and technological marvels. You get to benefit from thousands of years of human progress, accumulated knowledge, and technological development. The next time you complain about your Wi-Fi being slow, remember that Stone Age humans couldn't communicate with anyone beyond shouting distance. The next time you're annoyed about waiting in line at the grocery store, remember that Stone Age humans spent most of their waking hours searching for food that might kill them. The next time you're frustrated about traffic, remember that Stone Age humans walked everywhere and were constantly at risk of being eaten by predators. Your modern life, with all its minor inconveniences and daily stresses, is still incredibly comfortable, safe, and convenient compared to the harsh realities of Stone Age survival. You get to live in heated homes, eat processed food, wear manufactured clothing, and receive medical care that would seem miraculous to our ancestors. So maybe, just maybe, you can appreciate your modern life a little more. Maybe you can be grateful for the infrastructure, technology, and social systems that keep you alive and comfortable. Maybe you can recognize that your daily problems are actually incredibly minor, compared to the life or death struggles that defined human existence for most of our species' history. And maybe, just maybe, you can stop complaining about your alarm clock, and start appreciating the fact that you're comfortable and safe in a world that our ancestors could never have imagined. Because the Stone Age was brutal, unforgiving, and absolutely certain to kill you, your modern life is easy, comfortable, and designed to keep you alive and happy. The contrast couldn't be more stark, and the choice couldn't be more obvious. Welcome to the modern world. Population, incredibly lucky. Survival rate, excellent. Your chances actually pretty good, as long as you stay here where you belong.
Let's talk about something that might shock you.
Stone Age children were more capable of surviving than you are. While you're stumbling around trying to figure out which end of a stick to use for digging, a 7-year-old Stone Age child could start a fire, identify edible plants, track animals, and navigate by the stars. They were tiny survival machines who had been training for the apocalypse since they could walk. Stone Age children weren't playing with toys and watching cartoons. They were learning skills that would keep them alive. By age 5, they could identify dozens of edible plants, recognize the signs of dangerous animals, and understand weather patterns. By age 10, they were contributing meaningfully to their family's survival. By age 15, they were essentially adults with a decade of survival experience. You, meanwhile, probably can't even remember what you had for breakfast yesterday without checking your phone. You think you're going to out-survive a Stone Age child who's been practicing survival skills since they were old enough to hold a stick. Let's break this down, skill by skill, because the comparison is going to be humiliating for you. Fire making. That Stone Age child has been watching adults make fire every day of their life. They've been practicing with smaller sticks, learning the technique, understanding the physics of friction and tinder. They can probably create sparks faster than you can open a lighter app on your phone. They know which wood works best, which tinder catches easiest, and how to nurse a tiny flame into a roaring fire. You've seen fire making in movies, and maybe tried it once at summer camp. You failed then, and you're going to fail now. While a child half your age creates fire like it's no big deal. Food identification. Stone Age children could identify hundreds of plants, knowing which parts were edible, which were poisonous, and which had medicinal properties. They could tell the difference between similar-looking plants that meant the difference between nutrition and death. They knew which berries were safe, which roots were nutritious, and which leaves could be eaten raw versus cooked. You can barely tell the difference between broccoli and cauliflower in the grocery store. You think you're going to successfully identify edible plants in the wild, when a Stone Age child could literally save your life by pointing out which berries won't kill you. Animal tracking. Stone Age children could read animal signs like you read street signs. They could tell you which animals had passed through an area, how long ago, where they were going, and whether they were healthy or injured. They could identify different animals by their tracks, their droppings, and the signs they left behind. You probably can't tell the difference between a dog print and a cat print in fresh mud. You think you're going to successfully track animals for food, when a Stone Age child could look at some scratches in the dirt and tell you the complete story of what happened there. Weather prediction. Stone Age children learned to read the sky, the wind, and the behavior of animals to predict weather changes. They could tell you when storms were coming, when the weather was going to change, and when it was safe to travel. They understood that weather prediction was literally a matter of life and death. You check your weather app and complain when it's wrong by a few degrees. You think you're going to successfully predict weather patterns using natural signs that a Stone Age child could read like a book. Tool making. Stone Age children could craft basic tools from natural materials. They could sharpen sticks into spears, chip flint into cutting edges, and fashion simple implements that would make your life significantly easier. They understood the properties of different materials and how to work with them effectively. You probably can't even sharpen a pencil without an electric sharpener. You think you're going to successfully create tools from raw materials when a Stone Age child could fashion a working knife from a piece of rock. Navigation. Stone Age children could navigate using the sun, stars, and natural landmarks. They could find their way home across vast distances, remember the locations of water sources and food supplies, and understand the layout of their territory better than you understand your own neighborhood. You get lost in parking lots and need GPS to find your way to places you've been dozens of times. You think you're going to successfully navigate prehistoric wilderness when a Stone Age child could lead you home blindfolded. But here's the most depressing part. Stone Age children were also tougher, more resilient, and better adapted to harsh conditions than you are. They could handle pain, discomfort, and fear better than modern adults. They had been exposed to danger, difficulty, and deprivation from birth, and they had developed the mental toughness required to survive in hostile conditions. You probably cry when you stub your toe and need therapy when someone is mean to you on the internet. You think you're going to successfully handle the constant stress, pain, and fear of Stone Age survival when a Stone Age child could endure conditions that would break your mind. Stone Age children also had something you don't have, the support and teaching of adults who knew what they were doing. They were learning from experts, practicing under supervision, and developing skills in a structured environment where mistakes were corrected and knowledge was passed down systematically. You're going to be learning through trial and error, with no guidance, no supervision, and no second chances. Every mistake you make could be fatal, and you have no one to teach you the right way to do things. And here's the really humiliating reality. If you somehow encountered a Stone Age child in your survival situation, they would probably try to help you. They would share their knowledge, teach you basic survival skills, and try to keep you alive. A child would be taking care of you, an adult, because they would recognize that you're completely incompetent and need help to survive. How does that make you feel? A 7-year-old Stone Age child is more capable of surviving than you are. They know more about practical survival skills than you'll ever learn. They're tougher, more resilient, and better adapted to harsh conditions than you could ever be. You're going to die in conditions that a Stone Age child would find mildly challenging. You're going to fail at tasks that they could accomplish while singing Stone Age nursery rhymes. You're going to be out-survived by someone who hasn't even hit puberty yet. Let's talk about something that would make your Stone Age survival even more impossible: pregnancy and childbirth. Because if you happen to be a woman who's pregnant, or if you're with someone who is, you're not just facing your own death anymore. You're dealing with the reality that pregnancy in the Stone Age was essentially a death sentence with a side of potential new life. Stone Age maternal mortality rates were astronomical. We're talking about 1 in 4 women dying during childbirth, and that's among women who had access to experienced midwives, traditional medicines, and community support. You have none of these advantages. You have no medical knowledge, no proper nutrition, no safe birthing environment, and no backup plan for when things go wrong. And things will go wrong. Modern childbirth, with all its medical monitoring, surgical interventions, and emergency procedures, still carries risks. Stone Age childbirth was Russian roulette with biological bullets. Every pregnancy was a gamble with death, and the odds were not in your favor. Let's start with prenatal care, or rather the complete lack thereof. Modern pregnant women get regular checkups, ultrasounds, blood tests, and nutritional monitoring. They know if their baby is developing properly, if there are potential complications, and if they need special care or interventions. Stone Age pregnant women had to guess. They had traditional knowledge about pregnancy symptoms and some herbal remedies for common problems, but they had no way to know if their baby was positioned correctly, if there were developmental issues, or if they were carrying multiples. They just had to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. You don't even know traditional pregnancy remedies or warning signs. You're going to be pregnant in the Stone Age with no more knowledge than babies come from somewhere in the belly area. You think you're going to successfully manage a pregnancy when you can't even manage basic survival. Then there's nutrition during pregnancy. Modern pregnant women are advised to eat specific foods, take prenatal vitamins, and maintain proper nutrition for fetal development. They have access to a variety of foods that provide essential nutrients, and they can supplement their diet with vitamins and minerals. Stone Age pregnant women had to maintain proper nutrition, using only whatever food they could gather, hunt, or scavenge. They needed extra calories, extra protein, and specific nutrients for fetal development, but they had no way to ensure they were getting adequate nutrition. They were often malnourished themselves, and pregnancy made their nutritional needs even more critical. You're going to be struggling to find enough food to keep yourself alive, let alone maintain the extra nutritional requirements of pregnancy. You're going to be malnourished, deficient in essential vitamins and minerals, and unable to provide proper nutrition for fetal development. Physical demands during pregnancy are going to be impossible to manage. Modern pregnant women can reduce their activity levels, avoid heavy lifting, and modify their daily routines to accommodate their changing bodies. They can rest when they need to, avoid strenuous activities, and focus on maintaining their health. Stone Age pregnant women had to maintain the same level of physical activity required for survival. They had to walk long distances, carry heavy loads, gather food, and perform physically demanding tasks right up until labor began. There was no maternity leave, no light duty, no accommodation for pregnancy-related limitations. You're going to be trying to survive in harsh conditions while dealing with pregnancy fatigue, morning sickness, and physical limitations. You're going to be carrying supplies, walking long distances, and performing survival tasks while your body is already stressed from pregnancy. And then there's the birth itself. Modern women give birth in sterile environments with trained medical professionals, pain medication, and emergency surgical procedures available if needed. They have monitoring equipment to track fetal distress, medications to speed up or slow down labor, and immediate access to life-saving interventions. Stone Age women gave birth, wherever they happened to be, when labor started. Maybe they had experienced women to help them, maybe they didn't. Maybe they had some traditional pain remedies, maybe they didn't. Maybe the birth went smoothly, maybe it didn't. If there were complications, they just died. You're going to give birth in unsanitary conditions, with no medical assistance, no pain relief, and no way to handle complications. If the baby is breech, you're probably going to die. If you hemorrhage, you're probably going to die. If you develop an infection, you're probably going to die. If the labor is too long or too difficult, you're probably going to die. But let's say you somehow survive the birth. Now you have a newborn baby to keep alive in Stone Age conditions. Newborns are incredibly vulnerable and require constant care, proper nutrition, and protection from the elements. They need to be kept warm, fed regularly, and protected from disease and injury. Stone Age mothers had to care for newborns, while maintaining all the other activities required for survival. They had to breastfeed, assuming they could produce adequate milk while malnourished, carry the baby while traveling, and keep the baby warm and safe in primitive conditions. You're going to have to care for a helpless infant, while you're struggling to keep yourself alive. You're going to have to provide nutrition when you're malnourished, keep the baby warm when you're cold, and protect the baby from dangers when you can't protect yourself. Infant mortality in the Stone Age was around 30 to 50%. That means that even if you survived childbirth, your baby had at best a 50/50th chance of surviving its first year. Common causes of infant death included malnutrition, exposure, disease, and accidents, all things that would be constant threats in your survival situation. You're going to watch your baby die slowly from malnutrition, exposure, or disease, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to hold your dying infant, while you're both slowly starving to death in primitive conditions. And here's the really cruel irony. Having a baby in the Stone Age would actually decrease your chances of survival. You'd be slower, more vulnerable, and less able to focus on the tasks required to stay alive. You'd be trying to care for 2 lives instead of 1, and you'd probably end up losing both. Stone Age communities valued children because they represented the future of the group, but they also understood that pregnancy and childbirth were incredibly dangerous. They had cultural practices and support systems to help women through pregnancy and childbirth, but they also accepted that maternal and infant mortality were facts of life. You have no cultural support, no traditional knowledge, and no community assistance. You're going to be completely on your own, with a biological process that was dangerous even for experienced Stone Age women with community support.
Here's something that might surprise you about Stone Age life. There were very few elderly people, not because they were abandoned or mistreated, but because the conditions were so harsh that most people simply didn't live long enough to become elderly. And if you think your Stone Age survival is difficult now, imagine trying to do it when you're 60, 70, or 80 years old. But here's the twist. The few elderly people who did exist in Stone Age communities were incredibly valuable and respected. They were walking encyclopedias of survival knowledge, living libraries of accumulated wisdom, and the only people who had lived long enough to experience rare events like major droughts, volcanic eruptions, or climate changes. Stone Age elders had survived everything that killed their peers. They had lived through famines, diseases, accidents, and attacks. They had accumulated decades of experience in survival skills, weather prediction, food preparation, and medical treatment. They were the people you consulted when facing unusual challenges or making important decisions. You, on the other hand, are going to be elderly without any of the knowledge, skills, or experience that made Stone Age elders valuable. You're going to be old, frail, and useless in a survival situation. You're going to be everything that Stone Age communities couldn't afford to support Heniki of, a burden without benefits. Let's talk about what being elderly in the Stone Age actually meant.
First, you had to be incredibly tough and resilient just to reach old age. You had to survive childhood diseases, accidents, injuries, famines, and all the other hazards that killed most people before they reached 40. You had to be genetically blessed, environmentally adapted, and incredibly skilled at survival. Stone Age elders were the ultimate survivors. They had proven their toughness over decades of harsh conditions. They had developed immunity to local diseases, learned to avoid dangerous situations, and mastered the skills required for long-term survival. They were the people who had figured out how to live in conditions that killed everyone else. You're going to be elderly without any of this preparation. You're going to be old, weak, and inexperienced in survival conditions. You're going to have all the physical limitations of age, without any of the knowledge or skills that made Stone Age elders valuable. Physical limitations are going to make everything impossible. Your joints are going to ache constantly from sleeping on hard surfaces and doing physical labor. Your muscles are going to be weaker and more prone to injury. Your bones are going to be more fragile and slower to heal. Your stamina is going to be limited, and you're going to need more rest and recovery time. Stone Age elders had developed strategies for managing their physical limitations. They knew how to pace themselves, which activities to avoid, and how to contribute to the group in ways that didn't require peak physical performance. They had earned the right to receive care and assistance from younger community members. You're going to be elderly without any of these advantages. You're going to be slow, weak, and unable to keep up with the physical demands of survival. You're going to be a liability in every survival situation, and you're going to slow down everyone around you. Your modern elderly lifestyle has left you completely unprepared for Stone Age survival. You're used to comfortable furniture, climate control, modern medicine, and assistance with daily activities. You've never had to do physical labor while dealing with arthritis, never had to walk long distances on damaged knees, never had to handle survival tasks with limited strength and mobility. Stone Age elders had been doing physical labor their entire lives. Their bodies were adapted to continuous activity, and they had learned to work within their physical limitations. They had developed techniques for conserving energy, managing pain, and staying productive despite age-related challenges. You're going to be trying to learn survival skills while dealing with age-related physical limitations. You're going to be slower to learn, quicker to tire, and more prone to injury. You're going to be everything that Stone Age survival can't accommodate: slow, weak, and dependent on others. But the most devastating part is that you're going to be elderly without wisdom. Stone Age elders had decades of survival experience, accumulated knowledge, and proven competence. They had earned their status through years of successful survival and contribution to their communities. You're going to be old without being wise, elderly without being experienced, and aged without being valuable. You're going to have all the physical limitations of age without any of the knowledge or skills that made Stone Age elders worth protecting. Memory problems are going to make everything worse. You're going to forget where you put things, forget which plants are edible, forget how to perform essential tasks. In a survival situation where remembering details could mean the difference between life and death, your aging brain is going to be a constant liability. Stone Age elders had trained their memories over decades of survival. They had developed techniques for remembering important information, and they had practiced essential skills so many times that they became automatic. They could perform survival tasks even when their memory was failing, because the skills were deeply ingrained. You're going to be trying to learn new skills while dealing with age-related memory problems. You're going to forget essential information, make repeated mistakes, and be unable to build on previous learning. You're going to be like a computer with a corrupted hard drive trying to run survival software. And here's the really depressing part. Stone Age communities sometimes had to make difficult decisions about elderly members who could no longer contribute to group survival. During times of severe hardship, when resources were scarce and mobility was essential, elderly members might be left behind or abandoned for the survival of the group. You're going to be the elderly person who gets left behind. You're going to be too slow, too weak, and too dependent to keep up with the group. You're going to be abandoned in the wilderness to die alone, because you're a liability that the group can't afford to support. The few Stone Age elders who survived to advanced age were incredibly special people. They had won the genetic lottery, mastered survival skills, and earned their place in the community through decades of contribution. They were treasured for their knowledge, respected for their experience, and cared for because they had earned it. You're going to be elderly without earning it, old without deserving it, and aged without being valued. You're going to be everything that Stone Age communities couldn't afford to support: a burden without benefits, a liability without value, and a drain on resources without compensation. Let's talk about something that modern society has taught us to value: inclusion and accommodation for people with disabilities. It's a beautiful ideal that reflects our civilization's progress and humanity. But in the Stone Age, people with significant disabilities simply didn't exist. Not because they weren't born, but because they didn't survive long enough to become a consideration. This isn't a judgment about the moral worth of people with disabilities. It's a harsh reality about survival in an environment where every member of the community had to contribute to staying alive. Stone Age communities couldn't afford to support non-productive members, and they certainly couldn't provide the accommodations and assistance that modern society offers. If you have any significant physical or cognitive disability, your Stone Age survival story ends before it begins. You're going to die quickly, and your death is going to be inevitable, rather than tragic. This isn't about Stone Age people being cruel or heartless. It's about the mathematical reality of survival in resource-scarce environments. Let's start with physical disabilities. If you have mobility issues, chronic pain, or physical limitations, you're not going to survive the basic requirements of Stone Age life. You need to walk long distances over rough terrain, carry heavy loads, perform physically demanding tasks, and maintain constant activity levels that would exhaust healthy modern people. Stone Age communities were nomadic by necessity. They followed food sources, migrated seasonally, and moved constantly to find resources and avoid dangers. If you couldn't keep up with the group, you were left behind. If you couldn't carry your share of the community's possessions, you were a burden. If you couldn't contribute to hunting, gathering, or other essential tasks, you were expendable. Modern society provides wheelchairs, assistive devices, transportation, and modifications that allow people with mobility issues to participate fully in daily life. Stone Age society provided nothing except the opportunity to die quietly when you couldn't keep up. You think you're going to survive Stone Age conditions when you can't walk 10 miles a day carrying 50 pounds of supplies. You think you're going to contribute to hunting expeditions when you can't run, climb, or engage in sustained physical activity. You think you're going to gather food when you can't navigate rough terrain, or reach elevated resources. Sensory disabilities would be equally fatal. If you're blind, you're not going to navigate Stone Age environments safely. You're not going to identify edible plants, spot predators, or avoid dangerous terrain. You're not going to contribute to hunting or gathering activities that require visual identification and spatial awareness. Stone Age survival depended on acute sensory awareness. You needed to see predators approaching, hear unusual sounds that indicated danger, and identify subtle visual cues that meant the difference between food and poison. Losing any of your senses was essentially a death sentence. Modern society provides guide dogs, assistive technology, and environmental modifications that allow people with sensory impairments to navigate safely and independently. Stone Age society provided predators who would kill you the moment you couldn't see them coming. If you're deaf, you're not going to hear the warning sounds that kept Stone Age humans alive. You're not going to detect approaching predators, recognize alarm calls from other humans, or identify the subtle audio cues that indicated everything from weather changes to animal behavior. Stone Age communities used complex audio communication systems. They had warning calls for different types of danger, hunting signals for coordinated activities, and social communication that depended on hearing and responding to vocal cues. If you couldn't participate in these communication systems, you were isolated and vulnerable. Cognitive disabilities would be perhaps the most immediately fatal. Stone Age survival required constant decision-making, problem-solving, and adaptation to changing circumstances. You needed to learn complex skills, remember detailed information, and make split-second decisions that determined whether you lived or died. If you have learning disabilities, memory problems, or cognitive impairments, you're not going to master the hundreds of skills required for Stone Age survival. You're not going to remember which plants are edible, which animals are dangerous, or which weather signs indicate imminent storms. Stone Age humans needed to process enormous amounts of information quickly and accurately. They had to recognize patterns, make predictions, and adapt their behavior based on complex environmental cues. Cognitive disabilities would make this impossible. Modern society provides educational support, assistive technology, and accommodations that help people with cognitive disabilities learn and participate. Stone Age society provided death by incompetence, but you made the wrong decision, you ate the wrong plant, you ignored the wrong warning sign, and you died. Mental health issues would be equally problematic. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other mental health conditions would make Stone Age survival impossible. You needed mental toughness, emotional resilience, and the ability to function under constant stress and threat. Stone Age life was inherently traumatic. You witnessed violence, death, and suffering on a regular basis. You lived in constant fear of predators, starvation, and environmental threats. You had to make life or death decisions regularly, and you had to cope with the emotional aftermath of survival choices. Modern society provides therapy, medication, and support systems for mental health issues. Stone Age society provided more trauma and expected you to handle it without breaking down. If you have chronic illnesses, autoimmune conditions, or other health problems that require ongoing medical management, you're not going to survive without modern medical care. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer, arthritis, and countless other conditions that are manageable in modern society would be death sentences in the Stone Age. Stone Age humans had robust health by necessity. Anyone with significant health problems died young, and only the healthiest individuals survived to reproduce. You're going to be dealing with modern health issues in an environment that has no medical solutions. The harsh reality is that Stone Age communities were survival machines that couldn't accommodate weakness, disability, or special needs. Every member had to contribute to group survival, and anyone who couldn't pull their weight was a liability that the group couldn't afford. This isn't about moral judgments or the value of human life. It's about the mathematical reality of survival in resource-scarce environments. Stone Age communities had to make brutal decisions about resource allocation, and they couldn't provide the care and accommodation that modern society offers. If you have any significant disability, your Stone Age survival story is very short. You're going to die quickly, and your death is going to be the inevitable result of trying to survive in an environment that has no accommodation for limitations.
Let's talk about tools, because Stone Age humans were essentially living Swiss Army knives who could create everything they needed from raw materials. Meanwhile, you're a helpless consumer who gets confused when your electric and opener breaks. The gap between Stone Age tool-making abilities and your complete incompetence is so vast that it's almost comical. Stone Age humans didn't just use tools that were tools. Every part of their body was adapted for survival activities. Their hands were calloused and strong from constant use. Their muscles were developed for specific survival tasks. Their senses were sharpened by years of constant alertness. They were living, breathing, thinking survival machines. You're a delicate consumer product that breaks when used outside of controlled conditions. Your hands are soft and weak from typing on keyboards. Your muscles are atrophied from sitting in chairs. Your senses are dulled by modern environments. You're like a race car trying to compete in a demolition derby. Let's start with the most basic tool, the knife. Stone Age humans could chip flint, obsidian, and other stones into razor-sharp cutting edges. They understood the properties of different stones, knew how to strike them at the correct angles, and could create various types of blades for different purposes. The process of knapping flint requires understanding of fracture mechanics, precise hand-eye coordination, and years of practice. You need to know which stones will work, how to prepare them for knapping, and how to control the fracturing process to create useful edges. You probably can't even sharpen a kitchen knife properly. You think you're going to successfully create cutting tools from raw stone using techniques that take years to master.
you're going to end up with a pile of broken rocks and bloody fingers. But let's say you somehow manage to create a crude cutting edge. Now you need to attach it to a handle to make it useful. This requires understanding of different materials, knowledge of binding techniques, and the ability to create hafting systems that won't fail under stress. Stone Age humans used various materials for hafting: mice, wood, bone, sinew, plant fibers, and natural adhesives. They knew which materials worked best for different applications, how to prepare them properly, and how to create secure attachments that would hold under heavy use. You're going to try to attach your broken rock to a stick using what exactly? You don't know which adhesives occur naturally, how to process plant fibers into binding material, or how to create secure mechanical attachments. Your tool is going to fall apart the first time you try to use it. Stone Age humans also made complex tools that required multiple components and sophisticated understanding of mechanics. Spear throwers, for example, used leverage principles to increase throwing power and accuracy. Bow and arrow systems required understanding of flex, tension, and projectile physics. These weren't simple tools, they were sophisticated mechanical devices that required engineering knowledge, precision manufacturing, and careful calibration. Stone Age humans understood the physics behind their tools and could optimize them for maximum effectiveness. You probably can't even explain how a lever works, let alone design and build complex mechanical tools from raw materials. You're going to be trying to throw rocks by hand while Stone Age humans are launching projectiles with sophisticated leverage systems. Tool maintenance was also crucial. Stone Age tools required constant sharpening, repair, and replacement. Users needed to know how to maintain their tools in working condition, when to repair versus replace, and how to prevent damage through proper use and storage. Your modern tools are designed to be disposable or maintained by specialists. You replace things when they break rather than fixing them. You have no experience with maintaining tools through heavy use in harsh conditions. Stone Age humans also needed to create specialized tools for specific tasks. Different tools for different types of hunting, gathering, food preparation, and construction. They needed to understand which tools were most effective for specific applications and how to optimize their toolkit for maximum versatility. You're going to be trying to do everything with whatever crude implements you can cobble together. You're going to be using the same broken rock to cut plants, scrape hides, dig holes, and defend yourself. You're going to be like a surgeon trying to perform operations with a butter knife. Material science knowledge was essential. Stone Age humans understood the properties of different materials, which stones held the best edges, which woods made the strongest spears, which plant fibers created the most durable bindings. They could identify materials by sight, and knew how to process them for specific applications. You can barely identify different types of wood at the lumber yard. You think you're going to successfully identify and process raw materials for tool making, when you can't tell the difference between hardwood and softwood. Stone Age humans also had to carry their tools constantly. They needed toolkits that were portable, durable, and versatile. They understood the trade-offs between tool weight, functionality, and durability. They could pack efficient toolkits that provided maximum capability with minimum weight. You're going to be trying to carry everything you think you need, which means you're going to be overloaded with ineffective tools that you can't use properly. You're going to be like a person trying to move apartments by carrying everything in their arms, instead of using boxes and a truck. Tool innovation was also important. Stone Age humans constantly improved their tools, developing new designs and refining existing ones. They understood that tool technology was literally a matter of life and death, and they invested significant time and effort in tool development. You're going to be stuck with whatever crude tools you can initially create, with no knowledge of how to improve them or develop better alternatives. You're going to be using Stone Age 1.0 tools while Stone Age humans had thousands of years of development and refinement. The reality is that Stone Age humans were incredibly sophisticated tool makers, who understood materials, mechanics, and manufacturing at a level that would impress modern engineers. They created effective tools from raw materials using only their knowledge and hand tools. You're going to be a complete failure at tool making. You're going to create useless implements that break immediately, don't work properly, and are more dangerous to you than helpful. You're going to be trying to survive with tools that are worse than useless, they're actively counterproductive. Let's talk about seasonal survival. Because Stone Age humans didn't just deal with one type of weather, they had to survive through complete seasonal cycles that would kill you in different ways throughout the year. While you're used to adjusting your thermostat and changing your wardrobe, Stone Age humans had to completely reorganize their entire survival strategy every few months. Modern humans experience seasons as minor inconveniences that require wardrobe changes and different recreational activities. Stone Age humans experience seasons as completely different survival challenges that require different skills, different food sources, different shelter strategies, and different dangers. You're going to die in every season, but you're going to die in season-specific ways that demonstrate your complete inability to adapt to changing conditions. Let's walk through your death calendar, season by season. Spring sounds nice, doesn't it? Warmer weather, new growth, baby animals. Except Stone Age spring was flood season, disease season, and starvation season, all rolled into one deadly package. Spring was when winter food stores ran out, when diseases spread through weakened populations, and when flooding and storms destroyed shelters and scattered communities. Stone Age humans knew that spring was one of the most dangerous times of year. They called it the hungry time because it was when people were most likely to starve. Winter food stores were exhausted, but new food sources weren't yet available. Plants were just starting to grow, animals were just starting to reproduce, and the gap between winter scarcity and summer abundance was a deadly period of want. You're going to hit spring already weakened by winter, assuming you somehow survived winter, which you wouldn't, with no food stores, no knowledge of early spring food sources, and no understanding of seasonal transition challenges. You're going to starve to death surrounded by plants that won't be edible for another month. Spring flooding was also a major killer. Melting snow and spring rains created floods that could destroy everything you owned, wash away your shelter, and force you to relocate to higher ground. Stone Age humans knew which areas were flood-prone and had strategies for dealing with seasonal flooding. You're going to build your shelter in a flood zone because you don't understand watershed management or seasonal water patterns. You're going to lose everything in a spring flood and be forced to start over with no supplies, no shelter, and no food in the most resource-scarce time of year. Spring diseases were another major threat. Weakened populations with compromised immune systems were vulnerable to diseases that spread rapidly through communities. Spring was when epidemics started, when parasites became active, and when disease-carrying insects emerged from winter dormancy. You're going to be already weakened by malnutrition and winter exposure, making you incredibly vulnerable to spring diseases. You're going to catch something that would be minor in a healthy person but fatal in your compromised condition. Summer might seem easier, but Stone Age summer was heat stroke season, dehydration season, and predator season. Summer was when the sun could kill you directly, when water sources dried up, and when predators were most active and aggressive. Stone Age humans had strategies for dealing with extreme heat. They knew how to find and create shade, how to conserve water, and how to time their activities to avoid the deadliest heat of the day. They understood that summer survival required different strategies than winter survival. You're going to be trying to stay cool using techniques that work in air-conditioned environments. You're going to be walking around in full sun during the hottest part of the day, depleting your water reserves, and suffering from heat exhaustion that makes you confused and unable to make good decisions. Summer dehydration was a major killer. Water sources that were abundant in spring dried up in summer, forcing communities to travel longer distances to find water. Competition for water sources also increased conflict between groups. You're going to be dehydrated most of the time, making you weak, confused, and prone to making fatal mistakes. You're going to be too impaired by dehydration to effectively search for water sources or conserve the water you do find. Summer predators were more active and dangerous. Animals had offspring to protect, territories to defend, and increased metabolic needs that made them more aggressive. Summer was when predator attacks were most likely and most deadly. You're going to encounter predators when they're at their most dangerous, and you're going to be weakened by heat and dehydration. You're going to be slower, less alert, and less able to defend yourself when you need to be at peak performance. Fall was preparation season, when Stone Age humans had to gather and preserve enough resources to survive winter. This was the most critical time of year, when the success or failure of preparation efforts determined whether you lived or died during the harsh winter months ahead. Stone Age humans spent fall in a frantic race against time. They had to gather nuts, berries, and other preservable foods. They had to hunt animals for meat that could be dried and stored. They had to collect materials for winter clothing and shelter repairs. They had to stockpile firewood and other fuel sources. Every day of fall was precious, and every missed opportunity could mean death in winter. You're going to waste fall because you don't understand the urgency of seasonal preparation. You're going to enjoy the pleasant weather and mild temperatures, instead of recognizing that you have maybe 6 weeks to gather everything you need to survive winter. You're going to treat fall like a vacation instead of a life or death preparation period. Food preservation was critical during fall. Stone Age humans knew how to smoke meat, dry fruits, ferment vegetables, and create long-lasting food stores that would sustain them through winter. They understood which foods could be preserved, how to process them for maximum shelf life, and how to store them to prevent spoilage. You don't know any food preservation techniques beyond putting things in a refrigerator. You're going to watch abundant fall food sources rot away because you have no idea how to preserve them for winter consumption. You're going to be surrounded by food that could save your life, but you're going to be unable to capture and store it. Fall clothing preparation was also essential. Stone Age humans spent fall preparing winter clothing, tanning hides, weaving plant fibers, and creating layered clothing systems that could protect them from harsh winter conditions. They understood that proper clothing was literally the difference between life and death in winter. You're going to enter winter wearing whatever clothes you happen to have when you were transported to the Stone Age. You're going to be wearing cotton t-shirts and jeans while Stone Age humans are wearing carefully crafted fur and leather clothing systems designed for survival. Fall shelter preparation was equally critical. Stone Age humans used fall to repair and winterize their shelters, gather insulation materials, and create protection from winter storms. They understood that shelter quality directly determined winter survival rates. You're going to be living in whatever crude shelter you manage to build during summer, with no understanding of winterization techniques or insulation strategies. Your shelter is going to be completely inadequate for winter conditions, and you're going to freeze to death in a structure that provides no meaningful protection. Winter was the ultimate test of Stone Age survival skills. Everything you had learned, prepared, and stored during the other seasons was tested by months of harsh conditions, limited resources, and constant threats to survival. Stone Age humans knew that winter survival was primarily about preparation and resource management. They had to ration food stores, maintain their shelters, keep fires burning continuously, and conserve energy for essential activities. They understood that winter was a war of attrition that required careful planning and disciplined execution. You're going to enter winter with no food stores, inadequate shelter, insufficient clothing, and no fuel reserves. You're going to be trying to survive winter using summer survival strategies, which is like trying to swim across an ocean, using techniques that work in a swimming pool. Winter food scarcity was the primary killer. Stone Age humans had to survive for months on stored food, with no ability to gather fresh resources. They had to carefully ration their food stores, supplement with whatever hunting opportunities were available, and manage their nutrition to maintain health through the lean months. You're going to be hungry all winter, assuming you somehow make it past the first week. You're going to be slowly starving while burning extra calories to stay warm, creating a metabolic death spiral that ends with your frozen corpse being discovered by spring travelers. Winter cold was another major killer. Stone Age humans had to maintain body temperature in harsh conditions without modern heating systems. They used layered clothing, shared body heat, and carefully managed fire resources to stay warm enough to survive. You're going to be cold all the time, which means you're going to be burning extra calories to generate heat, depleting your limited food reserves even faster. You're going to be caught in a deadly cycle where cold makes you burn more calories, which makes you weaker, which makes you less able to stay warm. Winter isolation was also dangerous. Stone Age communities were often isolated by winter weather, unable to travel or trade with other groups. They had to survive on their own resources, with no outside help or emergency assistance. You're going to be completely isolated, with no hope of rescue or assistance. You're going to be slowly dying alone in primitive conditions, with no one to help you and no way to call for help. But here's the most depressing part about seasonal survival: Stone Age humans actually enjoyed seasonal changes. They had cultural celebrations, seasonal activities, and social customs that made seasonal transitions meaningful and enjoyable. They saw seasons as natural rhythms that provided variety and structure to their lives. You're going to experience seasons as a series of different ways to die slowly and miserably. You're going to dread each seasonal transition because you know it's going to bring new challenges that you're completely unprepared to handle. So here we are at the end of our journey through your inevitable Stone Age death. We've covered every conceivable way that Stone Age life would kill you, from the plants you'd eat to the children who'd outsurvive you, from the seasons that would destroy you to the tools you'd never learn to make. The reality is overwhelming, isn't it? Every single aspect of Stone Age survival is beyond your capabilities. Every skill you'd need is something you don't have. Every challenge you'd face is something you can't handle. Every day would bring new opportunities for fatal mistakes that Stone Age humans learned to avoid through generations of hard-won experience. But let's take a moment to acknowledge what we've really been talking about here. We haven't just been discussing your incompetence. We've been exploring the incredible competence of Stone Age humans. These weren't primitive, stupid people stumbling around in the dark. They were sophisticated, skilled and incredibly capable humans who mastered one of the most challenging survival environments in human history. Stone Age humans were masters of their environment in ways that would humble modern experts. They were botanists who knew hundreds of plant species, zoologists who understood animal behavior, meteorologists who could predict weather patterns, engineers who designed sophisticated tools, medical practitioners who could treat injuries and illnesses, and survival experts who thrived in conditions that would kill you in hours. They were also incredibly tough, resilient, and adaptable. They could handle pain, discomfort, and danger that would break your mind. They could adapt to changing conditions, learn from mistakes, and persist through hardships that would crush your spirit. They were in every meaningful sense more capable humans than you are. This isn't meant to make you feel bad about yourself. You're a product of your environment, just as Stone Age humans were products of theirs. You've developed skills and capabilities that are perfectly suited to modern life. You can operate complex technology, navigate social institutions, and function effectively in a civilization that would be completely alien to Stone Age humans. But the comparison reveals something important about human adaptability and the relationship between survival skills and environment. Stone Age humans weren't inherently superior to modern humans. They were adapted to their environment through generations of selection pressure and cultural learning. They had to be incredibly skilled and tough because anything less meant death. You don't have those skills because you don't need them. Modern civilization has created an environment where survival is virtually guaranteed, where specialists handle most essential tasks, and where individual incompetence can be compensated through technology and social systems. But this creates a dangerous illusion, the belief that your survival is guaranteed, that civilization is permanent, and that you'll always have access to the systems and technologies that currently keep you alive. History suggests otherwise. Civilizations collapse, technologies fail, and comfortable assumptions about permanent security are often proven tragically wrong. The Stone Age wasn't that long ago in human history. Modern civilization is an incredibly recent development that represents a tiny fraction of human existence. For most of human history, our ancestors lived in conditions much closer to Stone Age survival than to modern comfort. The skills and toughness that kept them alive are still part of human genetic and cultural heritage. They're just dormant in most modern humans. So what's the point of this extended meditation on your Stone Age incompetence? It's not to make you feel bad or to romanticize primitive life. Stone Age life was brutal, dangerous, and short. Modern life is incomparably better in almost every measurable way. You're incredibly fortunate to live in a time and place where survival is virtually guaranteed and comfort is abundant. But perhaps there's value in understanding what human survival really requires. Perhaps there's wisdom in recognizing how dependent you are on systems and technologies that you don't understand and can't control. Perhaps there's benefit in acknowledging the incredible competence of your ancestors and the skills that kept humanity alive through millions of years of harsh conditions. Maybe you can't survive in the Stone Age, but you can develop greater appreciation for the civilization that protects you from Stone Age conditions. You can recognize the incredible achievement that modern civilization represents and the fragility of the systems that keep you alive. You can also develop some humility about your own capabilities and some respect for the skills and knowledge that you've never needed to develop. You can acknowledge that competence is relative to environment, and that your modern skills, while valuable, represent a narrow specialization that wouldn't transfer to other survival challenges. And perhaps you can develop some basic preparedness for situations where modern systems might fail. You don't need to become a Stone Age survival expert, but you could learn some basic skills that would help you handle emergencies, power outages, or other disruptions to normal life. The Stone Age humans who would out-survive you in every conceivable way are gone. But their legacy lives on in the human capacity for adaptation, learning and survival. You have the same basic human potential mind, you've just never been forced to develop it. You have the same capacity for toughness, resilience and competence. You've just never needed to cultivate it. So the next time you flip a light switch, turn on a faucet, or grab food from a refrigerator, remember that you're benefiting from an incredible system of specialized knowledge and cooperative effort that keeps you alive without requiring you to develop any survival skills whatsoever. You're living in a miracle of human organization and technology that would seem like magic to your Stone Age ancestors. And maybe, just maybe, that appreciation will motivate you to learn a few basic skills that would help you handle minor disruptions to your modern paradise. Not because you're planning to time travel to the Stone Age, but because competence is inherently valuable and self-reliance is inherently satisfying. You wouldn't last a day in the Stone Age, but you don't have to. You get to live in the modern world, protected by the accumulated knowledge and cooperative effort of thousands of generations of humans who survived long enough to pass on their genes and their wisdom. Your Stone Age incompetence is actually a testament to the success of human civilization. You're so thoroughly protected from survival challenges that you've never needed to develop survival skills. You're so completely supported by social systems that you've never had to be self-reliant. You're so effectively insulated from natural dangers that you've never had to be constantly alert and prepared. In other words, your Stone Age incompetence is actually evidence of human success, not human failure. You're the beneficiary of the greatest survival achievement in human history. The creation of a civilization so effective that individual survival skills are no longer necessary. So embrace your Stone Age incompetence, but don't be complacent about it. Appreciate the civilization that protects you, but don't take it for granted. Recognize your dependence on systems beyond your control, but don't be helpless in the face of that dependence. You wouldn't last a day in the Stone Age, but you don't have to. You get to live in the modern world, and that's a privilege that billions of your ancestors would have died for literally. The Stone Age would kill you in countless ways, but the modern world keeps you alive in countless ways. That's not a failure. That's the greatest success story in human history, and you get to be part of it. Stone Age incompetence and all